I have an odd relationship with the Yakuza series. I've only played Yakuza 0 and I've barely scratched the surface. Every single time I try to play it, something a little more interesting pop up and that got put into the sideline and I just lost interest playing it. And yet every single time there's a new Yakuza game that came out on PC, I just bought them immediately. It's one of those series that I'm very confident that I can really get into if I just spend a little bit more time or just have a little bit more interest to it. Not to mention, Sega's commitment to putting these games on the PC is something that I wholeheartedly support, and I cannot praise them enough for it. Now the entire series is a lot more accessible for players who are interested in getting into the series. And yes, I have all of the Yakuza games on the PC. The ones that I don't have are the zombie spin-off Dead Souls, the feudal Japan spin-off Kenzan and Ishin, the spin-off Judgment, and the upcoming Lost Judgment, PC release Sega please, and the PSP spin-off series Kurohyou Ryuga Gotoku, or Black Panther Like a Dragon, that not a lot of people talk about. The Yakuza saga with Kazuma Kiryu has ended with Yakuza 6, and it has moved on to a new protagonist in Yakuza Like a Dragon with Ichiban Kasuga. Yakuza Like a Dragon is an interesting title because Like a Dragon is the Japanese name of the series, just like how Biohazard is the Japanese name of Resident Evil, and they also combined the two together in their 7th game, and they too revitalized the series with brand new protagonists and brand new stories. What's with video games in 7 installments somehow revitalizing the franchise? Regardless, Like a Dragon came out last year for everyone else on the PC, but not here in Asia. Stupidly enough, the Asia PC release of Yakuza Like a Dragon was not in November 2020, but in February 2021. No, I'm not kidding. Sega delayed the release for the PC version of the game, and it's rumored to be because of some stupid exclusivity deals with Sony. Whatever the case, I and everyone else in Asia had to get it late on the PC, and the game was still not cracked to this day. But there are some promises, so while I can play the previous games of the series to wait until its release, I can't actually buy the 7th game and add it to my library. Then again, my year-end 2020 was quite busy with other stuff as well, so now that the game is out, or at least for a couple of months at this point, it's better late than never. And yes, I went straight from 0 to 7. I know that they both have radically different gameplay, but if Like a Dragon, which features new protagonists and new gameplay, can't get me into the series, then I don't know what will. And by the time I ended up playing the game through and not sleeping for several hours in the morning, I realized that I am so very into this game and I can get into the series more. In Yakuza Like a Dragon, you play as Ichiban Kasuga, a Yakuza member for the Arakawa family, which is part of the Tojo clan. After playing through the rather lengthy prologue session of the game in the series' city of Kamurocho, you are tasked by your boss Masumi Arakawa to take a fall for another Yakuza's member's crime. Like the loyal dog that he is, Ichiban Kasuga took the fall to repay the debt that he owed to Masumi. After almost 2 decades in prison, Kasuga tried to go back to Arakawa, only to find himself getting caught in a much bigger conflict that he refuses to believe. When he finally tries to confront Arakawa again, he actually got shot and dumped in the city of Yokohama. From there, he has to start from the absolute bottom and bring himself all the way to the very top, where he can confront Arakawa once more and find out why he decides to kill him at that point in time. The gameplay of Yakuza Like a Dragon is totally different to the gameplay of the previous Yakuza games. Previous Yakuza games are real-time action brawler where you can punch people and smack them with whatever objects around you. But Ichiban, being the Dragon Quest fan that he really is, loves to imagine himself as a big damn hero trying to save the world. And since he's thinking of the world like a JRPG, a lot of the aspects of Yakuza Like a Dragon are very JRPG-esque. I tried my hardest not to reference that other popular game series in this review because a lot of its elements are so similar, but I just couldn't resist. You know what? Every single time I reference that, I'm just gonna shout the names of the characters in their game, including the non-canon protagonists' names. I might as well, since they're literally neighboring franchises that steal each other's aesthetics. Since the Yakuza games are ported into the PC, I can safely assure you that the PC port of Yakuza Like a Dragon is good. It's pretty good as far as PC ports go. The game runs pretty smooth at 1080p 60 FPS, but my laptop can run a lot of games at that resolution and frame rate, so it's hardly surprising. There are loads of options in the game you can tweak around and set to whatever values you like. The game runs okay on a GTX 1650 mobile, but anything lower than that and you're gonna have to lower your settings. The game doesn't really need it since it's just a third-person turn-based game, but I do appreciate the FOV slider. Unfortunately, while the game does support ultra-wide, I didn't choose it. The gameplay is definitely on ultra-wide, but a lot of the game's cutscenes are on 16:9. There are loads of cutscenes in the game that aren't rendered on 21:9. At least with Trails of Cold Steel 4, a lot of the game's moments can be rendered in 21:9, but not so much with Like a Dragon. I do appreciate the game for giving us prettier background instead of just dark pillar boxes, but I'm sticking to 16:9. Let's talk about the gameplay. The turn-based combat of this game is very Akira Kurosu-esque. The face buttons correspond to the commands that you're gonna pick, just like in Ryuji Sakamoto. Some characters have weaknesses and resist to certain elements, just like in Antakamaki. Characters can inflict buffs, debuffs, and status ailments, just like in Yusuke Kitagawa. You can also summon other characters into the party to help you crush the enemies in combat, just like in Ash Ketchum? The thing is, the combat is also very dynamic in the sense that the characters constantly move from one place to another. You can apply area of effect attacks that damage multiple enemies, just like in Estelle Bright. The combat overall is very wacky and very satisfying, and has the same vibe and energy as the previous Yakuza games. It changes the dynamic of the combat while maintaining the spirit of the entire thing. Unlike Yakuza 0, the game doesn't have an easy difficulty, which I find rather baffling. There are loads of people in your fanbase that are good in real-time combat to the previous Yakuza games who aren't that great in turn-based combat of typical JRPGs. I'm one of those people. Despite my love towards JRPGs in general, I tend to skip a lot of the gameplay content so I can focus on the story. Thankfully, since this is the PC version, there are loads of options for me to manipulate the difficulty to whatever I like because I'm a cheapskate scrub. And it's not that the gameplay isn't fun. The gameplay is actually pretty fun. I'm just so intrigued by the story that I want to proceed to the next area to know what happens next, which is more than I can say to any of the Souls games. And the minigames are loads of fun too. I particularly really love the can collecting minigame. That's right, there's a minigame where you have to collect cans around the town, and it's actually surprisingly fun. It's one of those minigames that not only makes sense in the context of the story, but you can also earn money and lots of other items to it. I just wish that there are more maps than the same ones that we have, or maybe I haven't found them, I don't know. One of my favorite one is a business management game that isn't really a minigame if I have to be honest with you. The idea is Ichiban has an entire company to manage, and he's gonna work his hard ass off from a small company selling homemade food to an entire holding company managing loads of other businesses in many different sectors, from local cafes and brothels to big shopping malls and anime studios. No, really, you can own an anime studio in Yakuza Like a Dragon. If that doesn't sell you on the game, I don't know what will. Not only I love the business management game, I also really love the shareholders meetings minigame. I'm genuinely surprised at the amount of things that Yakuza can turn into a fun minigame. But overall, Yakuza Like a Dragon really excels in the gameplay department. Even if it's a turn-based combat, it's still really fun and wacky and absurd, and the minigames are still just as equally fun and wacky and absurd, though the skill cranes can absolutely go screw itself. Now let's talk about the story. This isn't the first Yakuza game that I played, but this is the first game that I finished, so I can't really say if the story in this one is representative of the rest of the games in the Yakuza series. I can tell you for sure about a couple of things. The fact that I'm playing as a character starting from square one with brand new characters coming to the mix really makes the series a lot more accessible for the newcomers. The shift towards a more JRPG style gameplay is actually significant on the story front as well. Unlike the previous Yakuza games where most of your journey are done solo, or at least as far as I know, the fact that this journey is party-based means that a lot of the story revolves on the party and the characters being a member of the party. There are loads of themes on friendship and how we can survive through the world together, and that tiresome cliche where the main character tells his friends that he's gonna have to face everything alone so he can protect them, which I love to call the Schwarzer sacrifice. What's interesting is that the game also has romance that you can do with several characters. I managed to get to Aries romance, which is the one that I totally ship, but you can actually pull off what Joker did and romance all the girls that are available to romance. If you do so, you will get absolutely whipped by them in a manner that is a lot more brutal than the girls in person. I mean Joker. Let's just say it didn't end very well for Ichiban. There are loads of fan services and references to the previous Yakuza games that I'm not really aware of because I haven't played them all, but the longtime fans of the series will definitely appreciate them. And you can totally be one now, especially when almost all of their games are on the PC and the modern consoles. I love the game's sub-stories. They always add a lot more depth, complexity, and characters into the world that the Yakuza universe are living in. I'm interested in playing all of the sub-stories as I progress through the game. I want to know what's gonna happen next. A lot of the sub-stories have wide ranges of emotions, and most of which can turn really sad and depressing, some of which can be really creepy too. As for the main story, it's alright. It does get pretty complicating as it goes on, but thankfully it's not the kind of complicating that I don't get. The game does a pretty good job at giving you information little by little and not cramming all of them in one. I like how the story is a lot more focused on characters and intrigue, and due to the JRPG nature of the plot where you have to control an entire party, you are not alone in progressing through the entire thing. The characters are all great too. I really love them, and I want to see them get better as it goes on. Ichiban is a really good protagonist. He definitely feels that optimistic shonen-esque protagonist character archetype. In fact, he reminds me of Naruto in a lot of ways, and that's not really a bad thing in my opinion. I actually like his character more than his actual story. I also really love his journey from sleeping in a box to becoming a president of a major corporation that received way too many vocational school certificates. Even if there are flaws in the main story, I ended up enjoying it, so it's a good mark in my book. In summary, I'm genuinely surprised with Yakuza Like a Dragon as someone who isn't a huge fan of the series. This is a game that makes me really want to get into the franchise and reinvigorated my interest to it when the other games just couldn't grab me as much as I wanted them to. The gameplay is visceral and exciting, it's really fun to play in a lot of aspects, the story is pretty enjoyable too with lots of interesting characters and side stories that will really fill up your time. The Yakuza games are sold rather cheaply here. I can get them for less than around $10 in a discount. That said, I did get Yakuza Like a Dragon on full price, and honestly, it's totally worth it. This is one of the few games that I will gladly recommend at full price if you love yourself a JRPG. This is a game that I can also recommend even if you have never gotten yourself into JRPGs or the Yakuza franchise in general. It's a great entry to the series, and while it has a radically different gameplay to the previous ones and also different story themes to tackle, it's still a nice way for people to get more interested into the series. That's all for the video today. If you like it, you can go ahead and click the like button and subscribe for more. If you wish, you can donate through the donation links down below, and thanks for watching.